when I first started with Ryan, I was working primarily in Brooklyn, and then I expanded, and he's like, whoa, I'm so glad you stalked me for 2 years because you're legit. But, I wasn't just like, oh, I need to work with Ryan and just, be given everything. I was like, I want to work hard. I will work hard. I will be the best agent on your team here. I think just being consistent is how I started getting a following, hopping on different podcasts, doing different speaking events. I think it's great to have a mentor and to have people surround you, like I said, supporting you. But at the end, it's like, you need to get to bed early, to wake up early, to train, to do things to succeed.
So you said a quote once, and it was, I am someone who challenges myself most of all. What does that quote mean to you?
So most of all, you said?
Yes, I am someone who challenges myself most of all.
Well, I think, I've been an athlete my entire life. So, well, not my entire life, but pretty much out of the womb. So pretty much my entire life. My first road race was at the age of 3. So, I think for ourselves, you have to motivate yourself. There's other people around you. There's mentors, there's your parents, there's your friends, there's people who can motivate you. But I think, if you really want to be the best person you can be, I think it's getting out of bed and doing things. You have to be able to self-motivate yourself. If you're a salesperson, if you're an athlete, if you're in training for something, like I think for me, I've always just been raised with that like mentality of, yes, people are going to support you, but like no one's going to do it for you. So I've always just been, I think that's part of the reason why I'm very good at what I do, is because I do have that athlete mentality of like, yes, I work with Ryan Serhant, who's the best in the industry, and he's amazing. He can help me and he can be a mentor, but really like if he tells me, do these certain things, or it's interesting because he once said like, if I sit here and tell people wake up at 5 a.m. every day, cold call at 9 a.m. every day, do this, do that, do this, like what, 2% of the people he tells in a room of like 1,000 will do it. So like you have to be that person to motivate yourself. What was the quote again? I'm like,
you knocked it out of the park. I'm somebody who challenges myself most of all. It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
So that's the first photo I took with Ryan at the old Soho office.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, it's funny. And I've got a bunch actually here from the different years I met with him. And it's a question that comes up quite often. People will call me about the coaching program or, what's it like? And I always tell them, I said, to be honest with you, the photo op itself is the least valuable thing, where people think being photographed with a celebrity is going to make everybody want to work with you. I always say the most valuable thing was what he said to me. He said, bet on yourself. And I think being around like an operator like Ryan, what really became my aha moment was he's an actual practitioner, right? And what you said so true. You can give advice to 1 million people. Very rare are the ones that actually go and execute. And I think that's what's earned the relationship that I now have with your crew and the whole surf fam. I guess, was that ingrained in you as a child? Like, were you always like that, willing to just run through a brick wall? Because I definitely have seen that in you.
Pretty much. My mom says like since early age of like 3, 4, 5, she's like, if you wanted something, she's like, I was just like, oh my gosh, she's going to have this thing. Like if she wants to win something, or if she wants a toy, or if she wants to, she's like, when I was 8 years old, she said, I wanted to move to New York City when I went to college and graduated college at the age of 8. And she's like, she's going to move to New York when she graduates college because that's what she wants. And that's what she's going to have a goal toward. And I'm just someone who commits, and I'm like, okay, I want this. Now, how do I get there? Like, how do I do this? How do I, like, what are the steps I need to take? And I think it's great to have a mentor and to have people surround you, like I said, supporting you. But at the end, it's like, you need to get to bed early, to wake up early, to train, to like do things to succeed. So I think that's super important.
You are competing with yourself. So, on that point, I think what I want to kind of draw out of this conversation a little bit is I see you in that ecosystem, but I see you as a driving force that would succeed despite the ecosystem, but you're better because you're aligned with people who are also running at a speed that makes you want to keep up, right? And for me, that's always been something that like, I look at other people and I draw energy from them, but I am battling my own race. I saw you make the jump and jump in early when Serhant was brand new. I'm sure that was a big risk. Was that scary? What was it like? How did you find success in your transition?
Well, I go way back with Ryan Serhant. So I started working with him actually in 2016 when we were Serhant team at a previous brokerage. And it's a funny story because I had gotten into real estate 10 years ago in 20, I don't know, what is that, 2014. And I was watching Million Dollar Listing New York, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy Ryan, like he's like cool. He's the best in New York. I want to work with this guy. And again, me being me, I was like, well, I'm new to the industry. I have nothing really to offer this guy, but I deserve to work with him and I'm going to work with him. So for literally 2 years, I stalked, which I now say pursued, Ryan Serhant for 2 years before I got any contact from him in agreeing to have me on his team. I'd like prove myself to him because out of those 2 years that I was like pursuing him, I got to learn the business. I became a rental agent and was like running around hustling. And then literally after 2 years of stalking this guy, I was sitting in front of him and he's saying, why should I have you on my team? Which he agreed to. And he's like, okay, you're going to be great. And that was 8 years ago. And so when he started Serhant 4 years ago, I had proved myself to him after, working with him side by side on his team that he's like, you're obviously coming with me to Serhant. And he's like, you've grown so much, you should probably start your own team, probably start helping us mentor other, sell it agents, other people in sales. And so that's how we sort of grew. It was kind of like a no-brainer. He was like, well, obviously you're coming. I was like, okay, am I now?
I wonder if we were there at the same time too, because I remember going to the old Soho office. I remember the bullpens. Jordan was my actual main connect initially, because he has a tie to London, Ontario, and long story short, like I remember a whole bunch of people working in the bullpen, right? So
yeah, that was like Jordan and I used to like make eyes at each other, just like he was sitting at the front, like rolling his eyes at people. I was sitting there rolling my eyes at people, doing the thing. Yeah, so we had that office, and kind of grew from there. And then when I first started with Ryan, I was working primarily in Brooklyn, and then I expanded, and he's like, whoa, I'm so glad you stalked me for 2 years because you're legit. But, I wasn't just like, oh, I need to work with Ryan and just, be given everything. I was like, I want to work hard. I will work hard. I will be the best agent on your team here. I was a college athlete, I'm determined. I pursued you for 2 years. And he's like, that does make sense. You are
and I think he appreciates that. No,
Yes.
well, actually, I asked him for mentorship when I left that office because he didn't have the coaching program back then.
Oh, wow.
So, and actually, I sent him a cold email. I was about to hire, I won't say the name, but I was about to hire a very other well-known coach, and I was going to write a $10,000 check. And I got in the car and I called my wife. I'm like, this other coach doesn't even sell real estate. Ryan told me like everything, told me his splits, how he lands developers. Like he told me everything in the first meeting. Nathan was with me. I actually see Nathan out there now. And I was like, can I just offer Ryan 10 grand for that meeting once a year? And my wife's like, go for it. Like bet on yourself.
Oh, that's so cool.
But here's the real story. So I emailed Ryan and I'm like, yo, that was so valuable. I'll pay you 10 grand a year for that meeting once a year. I won't bug you. I won't email you. I'm not going to expect you to take my call whenever, but I do think betting on myself, I would get that back and having to show up every year and show him that like, hey, I did everything you told me to do. It didn't really work perfectly, but I made these changes. These are my problems now. And that's been our relationship. Like every year or so we have that conversation and I'm like, should I franchise? Should I do this? But what's really neat is
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and then actually Kyle had called me and been like, hey, you said you wanted this. Hey, this is the price for the first year. Imagine that. Are you willing? And I think there's only 3 of us at the beginning. And they just beta tested random stuff on me over the years. But the whole premise of that story, though, was you throw yourself into something, you bet on yourself, and you run head first into a challenge, which was the quote that I said in the very beginning. And you told him, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to kill it. And then I'm going to expand. And, you keep expanding. I'll keep expanding. What did working hard mean to you? Because a lot of agents like to say they work hard, but I think very few know what that actually means.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just, I think it depends what you want. It depends what you want. Like I was like, I want to be the best in the industry. I want to, make a certain amount of money my first year, which did not happen. But then it's like, okay, if it didn't, it's going back and saying like, why didn't this work out? So I think working hard for me, like people say all the time, like I'm literally like, I feel like I'm a mini Ryan, not probably as intense as Ryan, because he literally takes my calls and emails and responds and does things at any time of day. And I'm like, how are you in Dubai and you're still answering my calls? And now you're in Mexico, now you're in Vegas. But I'm like a mini Ryan because he obviously is my mentor, but I'm available pretty much at all times to my clients, to my team. You know, if my clients are like, we might want to sell this, can you send us comps by the end of the week? I'm getting it out,
Got it.
you know, in
Yeah.
real time at the time. Just being super responsive, being available pretty much at all times. But that works for me because I love to do it, and I love to, you know, I love my clients to come back and say, well, it's a holiday weekend. You don't necessarily have to turn it around. But for
And
me,
you
it's
just
just like getting
chuckle.
things
Yeah.
out. Yeah, for me, it's just like I'd
Yeah.
rather do it because then it's like top of mind, and then I like wake up in the middle of the night with comps in my head. So it's like easier to get it out. But working hard is like putting in the time and
Yeah.
paying your dues and knowing that things won't turn around super quick, but it takes time to, you know, to achieve goals and to have realistic goals.
It'd be like training for a race. You're putting in your dues every single
Yep.
day to get to race day. One thing I actually
Yep.
didn't mention in my little story about Ryan was he actually said no to me for the $10,000. He said, "No, just pop by the office anytime. You guys are
Oh, wow.
welcome," which speaks to his character, right? And I
Yeah.
pursued him after, and I actually had Dean Cain, the guy that played Superman, send him a cameo explaining why he should mentor me. But I'd gotten that from his book of sending the bookcase, right? Of like
That's
constant
hysterical. Yes.
pursuing.
Yes. Yes. The
Anyways,
book
long story
to fill the
short,
bookcase. Yeah.
it came from that, but I think that speaks to everything that you just explained, right? About, you know, having ambitions and then being understanding of what the job actually entails, right? I think
Yes.
being available to your clients, I mean, they're paying for access. They want your time, they want your skill, and obviously your resources when you're deploying capital against listings and
Sure.
buyers. Now, I, in my career, in the beginning, had no skill, no money, lots of time, and I did everything and chased every lead I possibly could.
Yep.
Now I'm finding we are thinking about the depth of quality of work we're doing, wanting to work with less people, but higher quality work. And what's happening is we're actually ending up with more of the right types of clients because we're
Mhm.
being thoughtful about who gets that level of access. Because you sound disciplined. You know,
Yeah.
give me an idea of what a day in Talia's life looks like, and how do you
Yeah.
keep those boundaries in place where you're not completely
A
access
day.
24/7?
Good question. A day in the life with me is literally different every day. I am a crazy person in a good way. My team and people who follow me on social media, especially Instagram with my Instagram stories, are like, how many steps do you get a day? Because I'm literally, if
All
anyone who
of
knows
them.
New York City, I'm in Brooklyn, I'm in Harlem, then I'm
That's
back
so cool.
downtown in the West Village, then I'm Upper East Side, then I'm back to Brooklyn. And I do not have a driver. That's like my thing. I like to take the subway and I like to city bike around,
I
which
love it.
everyone's
That's
like, that's
awesome.
bizarre. I get there quicker than Ryan does with his driver. So what does a day in the life look like? I totally get what you're saying about like, you know, kind of structuring who your clients are and things because I've found to be the yes girl.
Yeah,
I've found that I say
me
yes
too.
to everything.
Yep.
Yes. And yes. And I'm realizing as my team is growing and as my business is growing and I'm, you know, kind of getting into a higher price point. I don't want to say no to people just because I'm like, oh, I don't do that price point. But I do find if you're saying yes to everything, there's people who are a time suck and it's an energy drain.
Sure.
So that being said, you know, having my team to leverage and I still want to do rentals, I still want to do lower end sales, but I think you have to be more transparent when you're talking to these like first time home buyers who are, you know, they're not realistic on timing or on price or things like that. Sort of how I'm weeding people out more than just being like, no, your price is too low. I don't want
Yeah.
to work with you because I do like to help everyone. Um, so a day in the life is varies to calls, to emails, to showings, to helping my team. I like to be very responsive with my team, super helpful, very hands-on. And I do, like I said, I just sold a co-op for $300,000 and I sold a penthouse for $32 million. So I love to do it all.
Sorry, I got excited there. The penthouse that I was in when I met with you, did that one sell?
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Can you tell me what it sold for?
You, you, interesting story. It's not cut and dry, but remember how there was like two separate apartments?
100%. Yeah.
So the people bought the duplex and not that additional one bedroom.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, so it's
I didn't even
interesting.
know
So
that was an
they,
option.
yeah, so we
Interesting.
sold it as one because it was like
Yeah.
three separate tax lots. Blah 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 blah. So they ended up buying the duplex and not the additional apartment. Put a
Interesting.
cement wall up, so that's now a separate one
One
bedroom.
bedroom.
So that one sold for 8 million with just the duplex.
Shout out to Chelsea. I love New York City. Like, I mean, me and the
Yeah.
boys, when we were down there, there's such an energy in New York, and I could see you
Yeah.
walking around. You should do a video with Ryan, have the Serhant Studios produce it, where they track both of you, him with his driver, Yuri, and then
Oh my
you
God.
on your bike, trying to
That
get
would
to a
be so
similar location.
funny.
It'd be awesome to see it if you actually get there first. I'm
I do
betting
get
on
there
Talia,
first.
actually.
I
I
do get
totally
there
believe
first.
it. Yeah.
And one time he actually recently hopped on the subway with me because he like looked up the time with Yuri and he's
No
like, oh my gosh,
chance.
I have to be downtown and it's 47 minutes. We looked at the subway, it was like 26. And he's like, can you take me down? I'll go with you. I was like, I'll show you the way. It's fine. You'll be okay. It was so funny.
That's awesome. Well, I guess speaking of social, big part of, I
Yeah.
mean, how I felt like I knew you before we actually met in
Yeah.
person. We got to speak on stage together, which was incredible. Loved
Yeah.
hearing your tactical
Crushed
approach.
it.
You did a phenomenal job. I learned quite a few
So did
things.
you.
Give me a snapshot of your social journey, because I think people see the today and assume that, you
Yeah.
know, they compared themselves to what you're doing today. What was it like when you started doing social? What are you doing
Yeah.
now that's working?
Yeah. I don't really have like a method to the madness of social. To me, I'm still like, this is so bizarre that it like actually does work for my business
Yeah.
and how I started and how I all of a sudden people are like, you have a lot of followers and how did that happen? I think just being consistent. I think in any industry that you're in, like people are like, oh, I don't really need social. I think people just seeing you on your stories and seeing you on your posts and seeing the reels, like just to have more of you on a day to day. Like people are like, we love that I do a lot of stories on a day to day, but I actually like enjoy doing it. So I think just being consistent is how I started getting a following, hopping on different podcasts, doing different speaking events. And I don't think, you know, a lot of people that I coach or mentor with Sell It, they're like, well, you have Ryan and you have the Serhant brand, but I don't think you necessarily, I mean, does it help? Probably, but I
Sure.
don't think you necessarily need that. It's just, you know, reaching out and collabing with people and going to other people's showings and promoting other people's things. Like you just start to gain following and just to be consistent. Because same thing, like I'll tell people I'm coaching, I'm like, post like at least 5 stories a day. That's so easy. And they're like, okay, I want to do it. I want to do it. And then in 2 weeks, they're like, I'm like, where are your stories? Where are your posts? Like you have to be
Yeah.
consistent. If it's time blocking and writing it down or just doing it authentically, like it's really not that hard.
Tell them this. This quote stuck with me years ago, and somebody said, "If I can't talk to you and I can only judge who you are by your bank account and your calendar, what story would it tell me?" Now, if you're planning ambitions, so you're goal setting every year, and you're like, "I want to get better at social," and you look at your calendar and your bank account monthly, does it track to your ambitions? And if you had to review your
Hmm.
ambitions monthly, you only have 2 choices: you change your actions or you change your ambitions, right? And it's what
Yeah.
you're saying. It's the conversation with Ryan around who's going to show up and make the phone calls. It's around who's going to show up and post the stories. And it's not being bad about yourself because you can't post 5 a
Right.
day. But like, if you didn't post 5, post 1, and then tomorrow
Yeah.
post 2, and then forget to post 1, and then the next day maybe
Yep.
try and post 3, right? And it's just,
Yeah.
it's not feeling like a failure because you didn't hit it at 100%. It's consistent
Right.
action over time that begets success, I find.
Totally. 100% agree.
And then on the, I guess one question I have for you, because Ryan and the whole crew at Serhant are so good on socials. What are some like insider secrets you've learned from being around them and seeing how they're moving on social media? Because they're moving at a different level for sure.
I don't know if it's necessarily like you have to be, not like you're saying you have to be like them, but I think, you know, people who see my social and who see, you know, other people outside of just Sirhan, I think it's just being authentically you. And it sounds cliche, but I like speak on being authentic and being true to yourself. And, you know, when I first got into the industry and I was like, I have to look a certain way, I have to dress a certain way, I have to like be in a certain neighborhood because that's like the expectation. I think why my social does really well and Ryan's social does really well and other individual agents who are like doing well and getting likes and comments and, you know, followings is just being authentic on a day to day. I think people overthink their social and they're like, I have to have makeup on, it has to be perfect. And they'll retake their stories 7 times. And you're like, it's just, you know, I'll drop my phone, I'll come back from a run and I'm sweaty and gross. But people are like, that's Talia's day today. And we're seeing it in real life. And I get clients that way. And people, you know, will reach out and, or I'll go to a listing pitch and they're like, we already know you went for a run this morning and then you volunteered and then you had showings. We know who you are, you know, just being consistent and being authentic. I think that's a huge.
One of my agents actually, who I've been pushing to do more on social because he wants to speak. He presents very well. I think he would actually crush at it on something like this. He did a post yesterday at the gym, and he used to be the regional director for training for Good Life Fitness, which is like the largest gym in
Oh, wow.
Canada. So he set them all up,
Wow.
trained hundreds of people. He went to the gym and he went off. He's like, what is happening? He's like, people are wearing Uggs, Crocs, and slippers to the gym, losing his mind. But he said he got more comments and DMs on that post than anything he's posted in the last 6 months, which speaks to what you're saying, right? Authenticity literally is everything these days.
Yeah. And like not even necessarily having to plan it. Like that was so organic. And he's like, wait, I just have to talk about this.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what do you guys think? You get engagement. I just think it's funny when, people are just like, oh, this just happened. And
he's very curated too. Like he presents well, like he likes branding, wants to make sure his images are polished when he posts them. But in this video, his hair was messed up. He was angry. Like I could see he was visibly upset.
Yeah.
And like the emotion came through.
His pain.
But I think like you saw the real Rob in that post. And I think that's why he got so much response. And I could tell you.
Go Rob, keep it up. Keep it up.
And yeah, I guess drawing the line sometimes too, and realizing staying in your lane is really important, because I used to be a scattergun. I would share everything and anything without realizing that like people come to me for typically real estate or media, maybe marketing, content production. They're curious about Southwestern Ontario. My political views, my faith is a big part of the content and what I share quite often, but I'm also thoughtful and selective about when and where I share that out. Because I find that you can go off the rails very quickly. You see people get political and go down that wormhole and blow up their whole accounts, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
One other question I have for you though, speaking of authenticity, what job did you do that took you to more than 40 countries?
Nothing.
You just traveled your whole life?
Story short, yeah, pretty much. So I moved to New York 17 years ago. I was in fashion and public relations. I graduated from college with a communications major, PR minor. I was like, oh, I don't love PR. Let me try to figure out my life. My mom was like, travel now, travel while you can. So I was working in a restaurant. I was doing like bottle service and serving and bartending. And I was so grateful because I was working at a restaurant that was seasonal. So we would have like the summer season, and then we'd have off like a month and a half. Then we'd have like the winter holiday season. And so in between those times, we'd have like a month and a half, 2 months of like a break. And to me at that time, I was like, whoa, I made like a ton of money. I'm going to go travel, which I like stayed in hostels. I went backpacking. But then while I was traveling, I would volunteer in orphanages because I was there for like, a month and a half, 2 months. And I was like, I love to volunteer and give back. So I volunteered in like a special needs orphanage in Vietnam. And I spoke English to a Spanish speaking orphanage in Peru. And so that just became a huge part of my life, like traveling, volunteering, and then working, and then traveling, volunteering, and then working. So
that's such an interesting balance. And I mean, can you tell me any stories of children you met along the way at the orphanages?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, thousands. But
I'm going to start crying, but anyways.
I think the most amazing, memorable among many was the special needs orphanage in Vietnam. And it was like outside of the city, probably like an hour and a half outside of the city, because they wouldn't let these children be among like regular people because they didn't want them to be seen. And most of the babies and the kids there were basically like thrown out by their parents. And so my friends and I went to this orphanage, and we're like, what can we do? Because there's just kids just like sitting there. They have no toys. They have like no beds. They're like, this lady moved from Germany, and she opened this orphanage, and she's like, I don't even have enough money to like feed them every day. So whatever you can do, like you just need to help us hold the babies because they don't get enough human touch. She's like, if you can help feed the babies, because we don't have enough people who can stay here to afford to pay them to feed the babies. And I'm getting like, oh, yeah. Okay. So it was just like, be so emotional. My mom was a special needs preschool teacher. So for this, to see this, like just that they have nothing, they don't have the support, they didn't have the food, they didn't have human touch. Just being a part of that was just so memorable and so hard to leave. Obviously, it's like one of those things where you feel horrible even like leaving, but just like very eye-opening. And obviously it made me so grateful to go back to New York and be able to work. And yeah, so
I mean, you can see that in your character. I think, right?
Yeah.
And how you interact with people. And it's such a dichotomy, because I'm thinking back to our conversation. And when we were on stage, I had mentioned, I'm like, yeah, it's great. Like, you can be standing next to a billionaire, but does that billionaire's family love and respect him? Right? Like, how
Right.
much does it really matter to have a nice car and a multi-million-dollar condo? You want to sell that condo, you want to do a great job, and you can find
Right.
purpose in your work. But your gratitude has probably stuck with you in a way that I don't think everybody's been exposed to.
Very true. I'm just like, I've seen a lot of the world, and yeah, just being able to, and that's what I still do. I love to travel, and people are like, "You travel so much." And I'm like, "I work really hard too, but sometimes now it's unfortunately not a month to 2 months, but a week here and there, and when we deserve that, don't we, Justin?"
We do. I do want to stick on this topic too, though, because I know you have a friend that you go on runs with on a regular basis. And
Yes.
like,
Yes.
tell us about him.
Irwin. Ah, Irwin is my guy. Shout out to Irwin. I'll send this to him. So Irwin, I volunteer with Achilles International, which is an organization that pairs athletes as guides with athletes with disabilities. So I started volunteering with them. I'm a runner. I ran track and cross country in college. I've done a few marathons. I still am a runner now. But they paired us together 7 years ago. Irwin is blind, and we've run a few marathons together. We run tethered together. And so we're literally like side by side, and I'm verbally and physically guiding him through the course. And we just became such great friends. He just ran the New York City Marathon. He's like a rock star runner now. If you want to look at my post on Irwin, it's fun because we have this like fun dynamic relationship. Irwin got very fast since I started running with him 7 years ago. But it's just like, so again, it's so inspiring to see Irwin, who's blind, who has to trust someone else like me to, just go out and go for a run, which we do and can do on the daily. So
I,
that's like just
I
amazing.
think hearing you talk about your entire journey from the beginning of this conversation to now, I think I know why you're so driven, right? Is you see such a balance of the world that
Yeah.
how can you not be driven with the opportunity that's out there when everybody else, I think our society, North American wise, not globally, but North American wise, we've had 25 years of abundant success. We've gotten complacent, addicted to instant gratification, allergic to
Yeah.
accountability. And like, I'm feeling inspired by some of the things you're doing on the volunteering side of things. And I think that's why you light up and you
Yes,
can
I
find
do.
purpose
I
in your
get
work
so
and not burn
excited.
out. Because
Yeah.
the other flip side of that, I mean, speak to the agents that experience burnout, because all they do is try and chase success in real
Yeah.
estate. They're not trying to become better people from a personal perspective. They're not doing anything in contribution besides trying to be a great real estate agent. I've never seen anybody super happy that just sold a lot of
Yeah.
houses. Like, usually it's complete human beings. So maybe speak to that person on how they can find that for themselves if they've never done
Yeah.
any type of volunteering or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think among volunteering, it's just doing things like you were saying, besides just selling real estate. Like Ryan has said
Yeah.
it before, having your ands. Like, what are other things that you like to do besides real estate? If it's volunteering, if it's working out, if it's, starting a book club or going to car shows. For me, I do love to volunteer and give back. And like you said, that is a good point because people are like, how do you not burn out? And you're just happy and excited all the
Yeah.
time, which
100%.
I have deals that fall apart too, but I'm also like, I had a crazy deal last week that literally fell apart. And I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. Here we go again, because life could be a lot worse. And
Yeah.
I've seen a lot. I'm just grateful to have my sight and my hearing and my senses and being able to wake up every day and have a job that I love. So yeah, I think just being able to give back to people is huge. And yeah, I do love what I do, and, so I think, just finding something besides just going after just having your foot on the pedal. Obviously, I do that also a lot, but also just taking a
Yeah.
breath, being able to give back, I think that goes a long way, and it just kind of gives
Yeah.
you a little, mental break.
I do think as human beings, like, we're innately competitive. And when we started this conversation before we started recording, so they won't get to hear that, unfortunately. You were sharing with me a conversation that you had with a client. I shared with you a conversation I had with a client. I'm like, oh yeah, we just went through
Yeah,
the exact same thing. And it kind of gives you
yeah,
perspective that it's like, it's not just me, it's actually everybody's going through it. But then I think
yeah,
of, man, like the little kids in Vietnam, whatever's happening in today's world, people can get angry about whatever they want, but really at the core of it, we're very blessed and we're very thankful on a daily basis for what we do have.
Yeah.
Rule of law, food, energy, where people across the world don't have anywhere close to what they have in North America, right?
Right. And that's how I think of it too. Like, this is such a great opportunity to be in a situation where you can literally don't have a cap to what you can make, you can, what your salary is or what your income is per week, per month, per day. Like, so that's why I'm always like, oh my gosh, I can do more. I can do more. And then do what I like to do, which is give back.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever really inspires you, I think is what you need to lean into, as well as, making money. Obviously, we all want to make money too.
If you had like the Talia McKinney Fund or something along those lines, your own charity, what do you think you'd be doing with that charity?
Oh my gosh. Well, it would definitely be something with like traveling. I would love to start an orphanage like in Thailand or something. And gosh, don't get me tempted.
You're gonna be making kids run. You're gonna do like a Tough Mudder for orphan kids.
I've done that in Bali. I like taught track, and we did like relay races with an orphanage in Bali. But I always do have this vision where I'm like, wouldn't it be great to like work 6 months and then take off and like go to my orphanage in like Thailand for 6 months? So,
I could see something like that in your future. Yeah, get the team dialed too, and it's a global village. You can do that from literally anywhere, right? So I'm not going to keep you too long. I know you got a busy day out there too. And personally, I love doing the podcast in person. The next time we come down with the crew itself,
I would love that.
Bring down my media guy. But I do want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. What's a piece of advice you'd give a brand new agent, knowing what you know now?
Just be consistent with your day-to-day activities, like have a certain goals that are written out and track them daily.
Are you talking like phone calls, touches? Like, are you data driven?
Phone calls. Yeah. Phone calls. Like if you're cold calling, if you're going on listing pitches, if you're following like an agent, if you're helping with open houses, like every week have like a template of like, this is what I need to do to get to my goals, and make sure you're looking at it on the daily. Because you'd be surprised how often agents I'd say this to, and they're like, I did it. Well, did you look yesterday? Did you look? And they're like, I kind of forget what I put down as what my goals are.
Do you time block and like set up your calendar ahead of time? I feel like you're very organized.
I try to. And my new operations manager, don't show him this video because he'll be like, she's always off of the time block because I'm always like taking calls and the team needs me and does this. But I try, we all have our thing.
Tell him to simmer down, because I time block like a madman. And I can tell you, I'm going to send you a video. Actually, this is not a listed video. Anybody listening to the podcast, I think I'm going to leave this out for about 60 to 90 days. I did an hour breakdown on my front loaded year and then my time blocking strategy. Wow. And the reason I'm going to send it to you, you can send this to him to watch, is I talk about how the intention really matters. I run by my calendar. That's pretty much it. But if I look at myself at the end of the day, like I maybe hit 60 to 70% of my blocks, and I'm never rattled about it, because if I do it over a week or 2 weeks or 30 days, the compounding interest of that is better than 99% of people, because most people don't have a plan. And if you have a plan, I think you're going to find a lot more success, right?
I love that. Yeah. Please send that to me.
I'm literally texting you as we're in the middle of the podcast, which is probably not ideal for the listeners. But if you're listening to the podcast, now's a great time to hit subscribe and share it out with somebody that you think would appreciate all of Talia's advice. And also go follow her if you'd like to be inspired, because I think she's absolutely incredible. That said, you've probably also experienced difficulty. How has failure shaped your life?
Failure shaped my life in terms of just, getting knocked down and getting up again. Like, again, I think it's just knowing that you're in the right place. If you are in the right place, so not everyone is. If you're not in the right place, get out of that place. But, I think I've just experienced so many downs that you realize like how grateful you are when you're up. Tomorrow's a new day. Just, if it's writing down 3 things you're grateful for at night, if you're waking up, writing down 3 things you are looking forward to in the morning. I think it's just getting knocked down and getting back up and just keeping the momentum, because it happens to all of us, and not just thinking, oh my gosh, all of this is just happening to me. It happens to everyone, but you just have to get yourself back up.
I absolutely love that. So we're going to end on that note, Talia. Where can everybody follow you and connect with you?
Primarily Instagram, at Talia McKinney on Instagram. I do TikTok here and there, and LinkedIn and Facebook as well.
You can also see that sick condo that she was mentioning in the vlog. Thank you for having us there in person. And I guess I'll see you in New York City next time we're down.
Yes, I love it. Stop by.
All right. Thanks, Talia.